messengers from heaven have established a spellbinding hold on the human mind and comforted the human heart. What is the secret of their ageless power over our imaginations? Neither gods nor mortals, the very nature of angels in the Bible remains a source of intense controversy. Are they male or female? Are angels merely messengers of God, or do they shape the destinies of humanity? In perhaps the most startling example of such intervention, some scholars believe that angels in the Bible may have had sexual relations with human beings. While angels take part in some of the most dramatic moments in the Bible, they remain shrouded in mystery. Why are some people in the Bible visited by angels and others not? How has the role of angels in the lives of humanity evolved over thousands of years? And why do some people believe that angels still affect our lives to this day? These are but a few of the mysteries of the Bible. Angels. They evoke wonder, mystery, divine power and grace. The beliefs in these mysterious beings have evolved through history, from the Hebrew Bible to the New Testament, from ancient times to our own turbulent age. Angels have undergone an extraordinary transformation in their supernatural powers and in their profound meaning to humanity.
The belief in angels goes back to the dawn of time, to the beginning of our records, to the very well springs of our folklore. And it's very hard for me to believe that such a universal belief, encompassing so many different cultures, so many different peoples, could be wrong.
Where and how angels were created remains a mystery. Have they existed throughout eternity, or were they themselves fashioned by God during the 6 days of creation? Are angels eternal beings, or are they themselves mortal? One fact is certain. The earliest mention of angels in the Hebrew Bible occurs after Adam and Eve are exiled from the Garden of Eden. Here, angels are presented not as gentle, compassionate figures, but as fearsome guardians of God's domain.
When he expelled the man, he settled him east of the Garden of Eden, and he stationed the cherubim and the fiery revolving sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Genesis 3:24.
Soon after the first appearance of angels, they are shown as having a relationship with mankind which is far more carnal than spiritual. In one passage in the Bible, an incident is described which puzzles scholars to this day.
When people began to multiply, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Genesis 6:1.
Do angels have sex? The text tells us that the angels, they're called the sons of God, mate with human women and produce a race of giants as their offspring. Now, the story seems to represent this as something that displeases God. God doesn't like the idea of this mixing between the angelic realm and the earthly realm.
But who were these enigmatic sons of God mentioned in the Bible? Strangely, these magical beings are never accurately described. In fact, even when angels make their first appearance in the story of the patriarch Abraham, they remain shadowy figures without any hint of supernatural powers. The angels come as messengers of the Almighty, bearing miraculous news for Abraham, that his wife Sarah, a woman of old age, will bear a child. When Sarah laughs in disbelief, an angel speaks.
Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? At a set time I will return to you in due season, and Sarah shall have a son. Genesis 18:14.
I think the clearest picture of the function of angels is really the three angels that came to Abraham to tell him that his wife was going to give birth to a child that would continue what basically became the Jewish people.
In another incident in the book of Genesis, one of the most enigmatic and disturbing moments in the Bible, God commands Abraham to offer up his only son, Isaac, as a human sacrifice. The agonized patriarch is about to carry out the Lord's terrible command when a voice is heard from on high.
The angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know you fear God." Genesis 22:12.
The question is a haunting one. Why does God himself condemn Abraham's son to death, while an angel delivers his reprieve?
So here you have the angel not just acting as a divine messenger, but promoting a message from God which is absolutely fundamental. I think we could even say that the angel is acting almost as a prophet. And this angel really does what a prophet does. It says, we don't worship God this way. That's the way the pagans do it.
While an angel saves the life of Isaac, many scholars believe that strangely it is an angel who will do battle with another patriarch, Jacob, in one of the most mysterious struggles in the Bible.
So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. The man saw he could not overpower him. Genesis 32:24.
Jacob's wrestling with this strange nighttime visitor is one of the most haunting and mysterious episodes in the entire Bible. So who was it? Was it an angel? Was it Jacob wrestling with his own soul?
While in the Hebrew Bible, angels have a many-faceted relationship with human beings, their connection to God himself is equally a source of controversy. In the book of Job, the scriptures provide a startling vision of the relationship of angels to God. Surprisingly, scholars believe it reflects the earthly power structure of the time.
In the ancient world, God is understood in the image of a king, and one of the things that underscores a king's power is how many underlings there are to carry out the king's commands. There's a certain tension in the way people think about God. God's awesomeness, mystery, reserve, and dignity. Angels bear the presence of God, and yet they seem to be a little bit less austere, a little bit less transcendent.
In the book of Job, within this court of heavenly beings, we meet for the very first time one of the most fascinating and mystifying of all the angels in the Hebrew Bible. His name is Ha-Satan, meaning the accuser. For centuries to follow, the world would know him as the dreaded figure Satan. But this first appearance of Satan in the Bible is not as an enemy of God, but unexpectedly as his devoted servant.
The Satan figure is not an evil figure at all. The Satan's role is to go to and fro on the earth and to try to spot any disloyalty or falsity amongst the people on earth.
With divine permission, Satan tests Job's character by killing his children. Then afflicting him with poverty and disease, to no avail. But Job stubbornly refuses to curse the Almighty. Strangely, as if echoing the suffering of Job himself, the Jewish people were about to fall victim to terrible persecution and conquest. It is the 6th century before the Common Era. The Jewish people have been condemned to slavery in Babylon. And yet they cling to their cherished beliefs and long for salvation from their suffering. Why has their God seemingly forsaken them? In their crisis of faith, the Jewish people turn to their belief in angels. For it is their hope that in this, their time of trial, these miraculous, compassionate beings will not abandon them. In the early portions of the Hebrew Bible, angels are shadowy, ill-defined figures. However, during this terrible period of need, they will undergo a mysterious transformation. For among the Jews, literature now emerges which vividly depicts angels as heroic protectors of a chosen people. In the scriptures written during the exile, angels become beings of flesh and blood, more tangible and more immediate than before. They acquire their own names and their own distinctive personalities. In the book of Daniel, which describes this troubled period, the angel Gabriel is pictured with startling vividness.
I looked up, and I saw a man clothed in linen, with a belt from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like a barrel, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches. Daniel 10:5.
In this story, set in Babylon, the young visionary Daniel is a favorite of the king. But Daniel, a Jew in exile, has jealous enemies in court who trick the king into sentencing Daniel to certain death.
The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you faithfully serve, deliver you." Then the king gave the command, and Daniel was thrown into the den of lions. Daniel 6:16.
The next day, to the king's amazement, Daniel is still alive in the lion's den. Daniel's astonishing explanation: an angel had come and closed the lions' mouths, protecting him. For the Jews in exile, what was the significance of this story?
The lions seemed to obey the presence of the angel which was there to protect Daniel and just behaved like little pussycats. Their jaws were shut. I mean, you didn't hear anything but a meow. They're not only protecting Daniel, but letting the people in exile know through that story that God was with them in the exile, protecting them from the Babylonians.
For the Jews living under oppression in Babylon, as for Daniel himself, a belief in angels provides a powerful reassurance that no crisis is too impossible for divine intervention. During the period of exile, as angels become increasingly important to the Jewish people, they acquire perhaps their most extraordinary characteristic. For surprisingly, it is at this time of profound spiritual crisis that in the Scriptures angels are endowed with their wings. Seeking the reason for this magical attribute, scholars have been drawn to an unlikely source. Did the spark of inspiration for angels' wings come not from Jewish tradition, but from the gods of the Babylonians, who were holding the Jews captive? By the year 538 BCE, after their ordeal in Babylon, the Jews at last returned to the Holy Land. With their faith in God seriously shaken, they seek spiritual renewal. Out of this quest emerges a mysterious new literature known as the Apocrypha. Here, Jews longing for spiritual sustenance find inspiration in stories of angels. According to the Apocrypha and other mystical texts of the time, angels are endowed with extraordinary powers. They are described as loyal guardians, known as those who never sleep. Other angels prophetically warn humans of their impending death. Still others offer their own prayers on behalf of deserving human beings. And yet, of all the mystical tales told at the time of the Apocrypha, perhaps none conveyed a more awesome perspective than the Book of Enoch. For here the visionary prophet Enoch reports on a spellbinding journey to heaven, where he witnesses angels in all their infinite glory.
I saw 100,000 times 100,000, 10 million times 10 million, an innumerable and uncountable multitude, who stand before the glory of the Lord of spirits. And I came to know their names, which the angel who came with me revealed to me. 1 Enoch 41.
Surprisingly, however, as the Jewish people's obsession with the power of angels grew, the very belief in these magical beings which had helped to sustain a troubled people during its exile would soon be viewed as a threat to Judaism itself.
And it was a kind of creeping pseudo-paganism, if you want to call it that. We don't have any gods anymore, we just have 9,000 angels, and no matter what you go to in the world, you got angels. In that case, you may as well pray to the angels. Before you know it, this thing was out of at least from the point of view of the rabbis, out of hand.
Fearful that the worship of angels might rival that of God himself, the rabbis refused to include the Apocrypha in the final version of the Hebrew Bible. And yet, despite their fierce opposition, the wondrous accounts of angels could not be suppressed. The stories continued until the birth of Christianity, when the belief in angels would undergo another mysterious transformation.
While they were there, the time came for her to have her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger. Luke 2:6.
The miraculous arrival of the infant Jesus, heralded in the New Testament as the Son of God, is one of the transcendent moments of Christianity. It is also perhaps the most frequently depicted birth in all the abundant religious art of the world. And yet, mysteriously, despite its extraordinary significance, the New Testament makes no mention of angels being present at the manger for the birth of Jesus. Despite this surprising omission, in the centuries following the life of Jesus, it has been impossible for faithful Christians to imagine the Nativity without the presence of angels. Why is there no mention in the Gospels of angels in attendance at the magical moment of the Nativity? Even more surprising, why, during the entire life story of Jesus, do angels so seldom appear? Could their scarcity be explained by the very nature of Jesus himself?
It seems to me that the shift is due to God becoming a man, and the divine takes on more human qualities, and that therefore God is no longer that strange, distant, divine, supernatural being that has no doings with humanity.
For barely 30 years, Jesus traversed the earth, serving as a messenger of God's Word. He was hailed as a miracle worker and a comforter of souls. With Jesus showing the warmth and compassion of the biblical angels, what need then would there be for these divine emissaries? Only upon the death of Jesus would angels begin to reappear.
But the angel said, "Do not be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen." Matthew 28:6.
From this very moment, when an angel announces the resurrection of Jesus, these divine beings again undergo a startling transformation.
There's a shift away where you do see the angelic type of being at the resurrection of Jesus at the tomb, but without the same kind of supernatural qualities. It's a young man seated at the tomb that says he's not here, he has risen, dressed in white. However, not like the angel that Jacob wrestled with, not like the angel that stopped the mouths of the lions in Daniel's tomb.
With the death and resurrection of Jesus, a bold new faith was born. The early followers of the new religion of Christianity found themselves victims of merciless persecution by the Romans. Just as the Jews had looked to their belief in angels in their times of trial, so the early Christians were inspired by the angels in the last book of the New Testament, known as the Book of Revelation. Instead of finding comfort in images of compassionate angels, the early Christians conceived of them as carrying out the vengeance of God, divine retribution against a world of unbelievers, a time of unthinkable destruction and upheaval. Suddenly, disturbingly, in Revelations, a tumultuous battle erupts among the angels in heaven.
And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The great dragon, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world, he was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Revelation 12:9.
Although the archangel Michael vanquishes Satan and his forces, the earth itself is so racked with evil it is doomed to experience the terror of the final days, the last judgment of God.
The prophetic books and the books of Revelation speak of the angels coming at the trump of doom and accompanying God on the last day.
So the 4 angels were released, who were prepared for this hour, day, month, and year to kill 1/3 of the human race. Revelation 9:15.
Of all the depictions of angelic beings, perhaps none are more fearsome or mysterious than those who are said to ride forth on the day of judgment. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades accompanied him. They were given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword, famine, and plague. Revelation 6:8.
As the Roman persecution of the Christians would finally end, so would fears of a coming apocalypse. The once obscure religion of Christianity would come to dominate all of Europe. And with that flowering of faith, the belief in angels would flourish among the devout as never before. Europe in the Middle Ages. For centuries, this period has been viewed as a shadowy time of fear, ignorance, and superstition. However, historians have discovered that it was also a time of ferment, an era of questioning and debate. And it was during this period that angels would become a focal point of intense scrutiny. Believing that these divine beings actually existed, medieval thinkers sought to unlock the most fundamental mysteries of their nature. Some philosophers theorized that angels were composed of a mysterious substance, sometimes called subtle matter, with its own magical powers.
Often you'll hear quoted as an example of the stupidity of the medieval mindset, the question, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? We've all heard this. But actually, that's an important question when you are dealing with the properties of subtle matter. How many angels can you fit into a small space? Then becomes a key question.
Of all the geniuses of the Middle Ages, none was more brilliant than St. Thomas Aquinas, perhaps the greatest mind of the 13th century. Attempting to probe the nature of angels, the great philosopher would advocate an idea which would captivate the popular imagination for centuries to come.
Certainly St. Thomas Aquinas speaks with authority on the notion of the guardian angel, and he delineates the role of the guardian angel, and thereafter it remains a pretty basic component of Catholicism. And there are still many, many people who believe in the guardian angel.
From his own extraordinary perspective, Aquinas conceived of guardian angels as a powerful spiritual presence with far-reaching powers.
St. Thomas said you can have guardian angels not only of individuals, but guardian angels of families, guardian angels of nations. He guides you through threshold experiences, and in particular, of course, he's there at the end to guide you over the threshold of death.
A contemporary of Thomas Aquinas, Dante, would express his own extraordinary vision of angels in all their glory and mystery in his poetic masterpiece, The Divine Comedy. During this imagined journey through heaven, Dante explores the 9 levels, or choirs, in the hierarchy of angels. For strangely to Dante and others of medieval times, all these heavenly beings were not created equal. Instead, their power and influence was defined by their closeness to God. Nearest to God in the heavenly choir were the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones. Furthest from God and closest to human beings were the archangels, and lastly, angels. As Europe would emerge from the Middle Ages into the glory of the Renaissance, images of angels would take shape in the minds of transcendent artistic geniuses. Men like Raphael, Botticelli, and Leonardo da Vinci. Their immortal conceptions of angels would become indelibly imprinted on the human consciousness for centuries to come. In the Renaissance, however, angels were sometimes depicted as sensual, even erotic. Was this blasphemy? Or merely another twist in the strange evolution of these magical beings?
Theologically and philosophically speaking, angels are transsexual. That is, they are both male and female. Human sexuality was depicted as a part and parcel of the beauty and goodness of God's creation.
The angels envisioned by the great Renaissance sculptor Bernini evoked this mysteriously sensual mood, as in his magnificent sculpture of a sexually charged visit by an angel to Saint Teresa.
He seemed to pierce my heart several times. When he drew it out, he left me completely afire with the love of God. The Autobiography of Saint Teresa.
The Bernini depiction is a particularly erotic and powerful one. One of the great legacies of the Renaissance is to establish for us the visual notion of an angel.
From Renaissance times to our own, the transcendent images of these divine beings have endured. And despite the violent upheavals of the 20th century and the skeptical assaults of science, angels would continue to inspire humanity. It would come to pass in the 20th century that, like angels, human beings too would learn to fly. They too would journey high into the glittering heavens among the stars. And yet even now, despite all the wonders of their advanced technology, as in ancient times, they would seek comfort in the company of angels. In fact, modern studies have shown that as many as half of all people today believe in them. What is the secret power of these magical beings that inspire belief? And what does this reveal about angels and about ourselves?
When there is a lot of speculation about the angels, it probably indicates that people are feeling vulnerable. People are feeling uncertain about their world. And by speculating on the angels, particularly notions of guardian angels and that sort of thing, what they're really talking about is a sense of the need for protection.
In ancient times, a fascination with angels was usually a sign of belief in values of the spirit. But experts believe that in our own time, our obsession with angels may ironically reveal more selfish, less spiritual motives.
I think the biggest misconception that people have about angels in the Bible is that angels are there to get you where you want to go, do what you want them to do, make you successful in life, only for your benefit and for your whim. Whereas the Bible is very, very clear on the purpose of angels. That the purpose of angels is to point beyond themselves. They're not God. They're His instruments and messengers.
Whatever our reasons for clinging to a belief in angels, the tantalizing question remains. Are the angels who inhabited the pages of the Bible and the imagination of our ancestors still among us?
Myself, I believe that angels exist. I've never seen one, but that's not to deny that they're there, that they don't protect my children. My mother raised me with a picture over my bed as a kid, and it was of this angel guarding these two little children going across a bridge over the river. That's been with me all my life, and so I put that up there where my kids are in their bedroom, and put that same picture over the nursery at the church, because we believe that angels do protect us and take care of us.
This revival of interest in angels, I'm rather skeptical about it. Is it something that is part and parcel of a real interest in the spiritual, or is it in some rather odd way a nostalgia for the past? But it seems to me that much of it is inspired by an unconsidered anti-rationalism, which I find actually rather dangerous, and I'm very afraid of it.
The question of angels will not go away, not by a long shot. Whether or not we'll find any definite solutions to the questions they raise this side of the grave, that's another question.
Why do we cling to visions of angels? Perhaps it is that in a world where human beings are increasingly estranged from nature and from each other, angels bear witness that miracles of the heart are still possible. To believer and non-believer alike, the abiding truth remains that in our turbulent world, angels offer us a fleeting glimpse of that rarest and most fragile of all treasures, peace. Angels are perhaps all we know of heaven. And if the ancients were right, someday we may all be able to meet these magical beings face to face and bask in their serene radiance for eternity.